a rainy day fund.
No.
I'm talking about a digital vault with over 35 billion units of a currency inside. For a decade, that's been your fortress, your leverage, your ultimate safety net.
It's a position of, well, immense strength, or at least historically that's what it was.
Right, was is the key word there. Because a piece of legislation is moving through the U.S. Senate right now. It's called the Clarity Act, and it's basically saying the party's over, empty half that vault now.
And we're not talking about a gentle, a slow unwind here. The sources we're digging into today suggest this could be the single largest forced asset restructuring in crypto history.
It's huge. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're unpacking this Clarity Act, the so-called 20% rule, and the three wild scenarios Ripple is weighing to get rid of about 14 billion tokens.
Which is roughly a $19 billion problem, give or take.
Exactly. And if you're holding XRP or even just watching the space, you might be looking at the charts thinking, why is the price down?
When all the institutional signals are just screaming something totally different, there's a huge disconnect right now between what retail sees on their phones and what the smart money is actually doing.
So let's bridge that gap. We have to start with the legislation itself, the Clarity Act. It sounds so harmless, doesn't it?
It's classic DC name. Who doesn't want clarity? But the teeth are in the details.
Of course.
The whole point of this bill is classification. The endless battle. Is it a security? Is it a commodity? The Clarity Act tries to settle it with a hard mathematical line in the sand.
And that's where this 20% rule comes from.
Correct. The bill states that for an asset to be classified as a digital commodity, and this is the important part, to fall under the CFTC's jurisdiction, no single entity can control more than 20% of the total supply.
Okay, let's just pause on that, because that classification is the whole ballgame, isn't it? Why does Ripple care so much? Why not just keep the war chest?
Because the alternative is staying with the SEC. And the market, it hates the SEC's approach. It's all regulation by enforcement. It's totally unpredictable.
It's like driving where there are no speed limit signs, but cops are everywhere.
That's a perfect analogy. The CFTC, on the other hand, is seen as the regulator for grown-ups. It brings predictability. And in high finance, predictability is gold.
And predictability brings the big money.
Precisely. Pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, these huge pools of capital, they just can't touch assets in regulatory limbo. They need that digital commodity stamp of approval.
So to open those floodgates, they have to play by the new rules.
They have to. Which brings us to the math problem. And honestly, looking at the ledger data, the scale of this is just wild.
Okay, break it down. Hard numbers.
The XRP ledger has a hard cap. 100 billion tokens. That's it. No more can ever be made.
So the pie is 100 billion slices. How much does Ripple have?
Well, depending on how you count their escrow and operating wallets, they control somewhere between 38 and 43 billion XRP.
So almost 40% of the entire supply.
And the new law says you only get 20.
You do that math, and you're left with a huge gap. They have to get rid of at least 14 billion tokens.
Maybe even up to 20 billion. At today's prices, around $1.37, that's nearly 19, maybe $20 billion of value.
It's larger than the market cap of many S&P 500 companies, and normally they just have their escrow, right? The slow drip.
Exactly. The 1 billion unlock each month. They sell a bit, relock about 80% of it. It's designed not to spook the market.
But the Clarity Act doesn't care about a slow drip.
Not at all. A law like this comes with a compliance window. It forces a structural change almost overnight. They don't have 10 years to sell this off. They need compliance now.
So how do you make 14 billion tokens just disappear from your books without crashing the price to zero? Because if they just market dumped this...
Oh, it would be a total disaster, an implosion. The liquidity just isn't there to absorb that kind of sell pressure.
So they have to get creative. Our sources have laid out 3 scenarios. One's a community fantasy, one's a corporate solution, and one. Well, one feels like a spy novel.
And the craziest part is, that spy novel scenario is actually being discussed in some pretty serious policy circles.
Okay, let's start with number 1. The one the XRP community is obsessed with. The burn.
The big supply shock scenario.
The idea is that Ripple just deletes the money. They send 14 billion XRP to a black hole address and poof, it's gone.
And technically, that's really easy to do. You just send the tokens to an address that has no private key. An unspendable address. They're basically thrown into a digital volcano.
And the argument is just simple economics. Cut supply by 14%, demand stays the same, price has to go up.
It's more than that, though. The theory is it creates an exponential squeeze. You have to look at the context. Exchange balances for XRP have already been plummeting.
I saw that data. It was something like 3.76 billion on exchanges in October 2025. Now it's down to 1.7 billion.
A 55% drop in liquid. Ready to sell supply in just a few months. The shelves are already getting bare. Now imagine you take a flamethrower to 14% of the total supply.
That's a supply shock of biblical proportions. If you're holding a bag, you're thinking, my tokens just became diamonds.
You would think so.
But I have to be the skeptic. Is a public company really going to light $19 billion on fire?
And that is the dose of cold reality here. Our source puts the probability of a full burn at maybe 10%, and honestly, I think even that's generous.
Just because it's too much money.
It's because Ripple is a corporation with shareholders and a board. Those 14 billion tokens are assets on a balance sheet. That's capital for acquisitions, development, payroll for the next 20 years.
Right. If I'm a shareholder and the CEO says, great news, we're incinerating $19 billion today to pump retail bags, I'm not clapping. I'm calling a lawyer.
It would be a fiduciary nightmare, total corporate suicide note, even if it's the community's dream.
So the burn is fun to talk about, but not likely. Which leads us to scenario 2, the blind trust.
This is the pragmatic solution, the grown-up in the room.
How does that actually work? Are they just, hiding the tokens?
No, it's a very specific legal structure. Ripple would transfer the excess XRP, that 14 to 20 billion, to an independent custodian. Think of a massive trusted institution like BNY Mellon or State Street.
But do they still own it? Or are they giving it away?
They'd likely still be the beneficiary, so if the trust sells assets years from now, the cash goes to Ripple. But, and this is the key part for the law, Ripple loses all control.
Ah, I see.
No voting rights, no ability to say sell now or hold, nothing.
So it creates that arm's length distance. They can go to Congress and say, look, we don't control this anymore. The trustee does.
Exactly. It satisfies the affiliated person clause in the legislation. It separates the company from the coin supply.
But from a market perspective, why is that bullish? The tokens still exist. The supply is still out there.
It's all about market psychology. Right now, there's always this fear, right? Is Ripple going to dump on us to pay legal bills? Is the escrow unlock going to crush this rally?
The sword of Damocles hanging over the chart.
Precisely. Move that stack into a blind trust, and that sell button is taken away from Ripple. The trust would have a strict mandate to just preserve value over decades, not dump on the market to make quarterly numbers.
It basically locks that supply away, turns a fire hose into a garden hose.
It creates certainty, and institutions love certainty more than anything. It removes the single biggest argument against holding XRP.
Okay, so that's the logical choice. It solves the legal problem without destroying the value. But then we have scenario 3, the government donation.
The wild card.
The idea here is that Ripple donates the excess XRP to the U.S. Treasury.
Or to a new federal digital asset reserve. You have to look at the political climate. President Trump's executive order started to talk about a U.S. strategic crypto reserve. The idea being that the U.S. needs to hold these assets to compete with China.
So Ripple just says, here's $14 billion for the national piggy bank.
It solves their 20% problem instantly. But think about what that does. If the U.S. government is a major holder of XRP, they suddenly have a direct financial stake in its success.
You don't sue an asset you own, you protect it.
You write policies that favor it. And our sources say it goes even deeper, to the IMF.
The International Monetary Fund.
They have the special drawing rights, the SDR. It's a basket of the world's top currencies. If the U.S. formally holds XRP as a strategic reserve, it could pave the way for it to be included in that STR basket.
That would make it a global reserve currency, effectively.
It would be the holy grail. It would shift XRP from being a fintech coin to a sovereign-level asset.
That sounds incredible, but it also feels very speculative.
Extremely. The source gives it a 15% chance. The framework is there. The political will seems to be building, but it's a black swan event. If it happens, you can throw all price models out the window.
So burn is unlikely, trust is likely, donation is a wild card. But our sources are leaning towards a mix of these.
Right, the hybrid approach. You rarely put all your eggs in one basket.
So what does that hybrid look like?
The prediction is they split it. Put the majority, say, 10 to 12 billion into that blind trust. That gets them legal compliance and keeps the asset value on their books.
Okay, and the rest?
The other 2 or 3 billion gets donated or moved. Maybe not all to the government, but to ecosystem funds, or it's allowed to be absorbed slowly by the new ETFs.
Speaking of ETFs, we have to talk about what the market is doing right now. Because the price of XRP is down about 60% from its 2025 high, retail is panicking.
Retail's panicking, but the on-chain data shows the smart money is doing the exact opposite. They are front-running this Clarity Act.
What's the proof? What are you seeing?
Whales. Wallets with over 10 million XRP. Since January of this year, they've added 190 million tokens to their stacks. They are aggressively buying this dip while others are fear selling.
And the ETFs. Because usually if Bitcoin is bleeding, everything bleeds.
This is the most telling signal. I really want you to catch this. There are 7 spot XRP ETFs now. In early February, when the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs were seeing massive outflows, the XRP ETFs had net positive inflows of $51 million.
That's a huge divergence. Institutional money is flowing into XOP while it's flowing out of the broader market.
It suggests they're betting heavily on this regulatory clarity. They see the act not as a threat, but as the final domino. Once Ripple gets under that 20% rule, the cloud lifts. XRP becomes a commodity.
And the floodgates open.
They do. And Ripple's already building the plumbing. They're getting banking licenses, partnering with custodians like Figment. They are getting ready for a world where XRP is fully integrated, like gold or oil.
So the message from the data seems to be, while you're feeling nervous looking at the chart, a squeeze is forming.
The supply on exchange is down 55%. Whales are buying. And the biggest holder is about to be forced to lock away a massive part of the supply. It all points to a supply shock, no matter which scenario they pick.
It's a fascinating moment. We're watching the government force a company to restructure its entire balance sheet, and the market can't decide if it's a death sentence or a rocket launch.
And historically, when regulatory uncertainty ends, that's when the real price discovery starts.
Before we wrap, I want to leave you with one final thought on that government donation idea. It sounds great for the price, right? But think about the philosophy here.
Go on.
The whole point of this movement since Bitcoin was decentralization, separation of money and state. If the U.S. Treasury becomes a top holder of XRP, have we won? Or have we just turned a private creation into an instrument of national economic policy?
That's the ultimate irony, isn't it? For it to become global money, it might have to become the government's money. And if that happens, the very definition of decentralization could change forever.
A trade-off between purity and power.
Exactly.
Something to think about as you watch the tickers. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.